G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about the UN. We're going to talk about winter campaigns, what may happen there, who has the advantage, and of course then I'll look at the maps and some other bits and pieces of news. But firstly, I just want to thank you all for the support with my new merch. I don't really do much of this very often with that, but it really does help me as a creator, because just have a look at my views in the past week compared to the week or two before. This is because YouTube is absolutely smashing me both with demonetization and with restrictions on my videos as well. So thank you very much. I do realize that, around the world it is very hard at the moment financially. There's a lot of problems everywhere, and trust me, I feel that. So thank you very much. Now, Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov has spoken at the UN about negotiations and Zelensky's peace plan, as the UN is trying to get some sort of grain deal back together. Now, President Zelensky was not present for his address, and the Ukrainian diplomats had left by the end of his address. But it's important to note that Lavrov wasn't present, of course, for Zelensky's address then either. So let's have a look over what was said and talk about this a little bit. Now, you can actually look up on the UN's website his entire talk, but it's very long, and they've only got it in Russian, not in English for some reason. So there's just some bits pulled out here that the news has pulled out, and I went through it, and this is really the crux of what I want to speak about. So he said Russia's President Vladimir Putin has declared our readiness to engage in negotiations. However, we will not entertain ceasefire proposals because we have done so before and were deceived. Now, these ceasefire things, this is what a lot of people will talk about, that we've seen at the front lines post-14 and in other areas around the world, ceasefires be breached by so many countries here, and that he's saying that we've been deceived by ceasefires before. We're not in that, but the readiness to engage in negotiations. And we have seen that a lot of Russian officials have said, over a lot of time, we are ready for negotiations. Of course, these negotiations aren't going to include the withdrawal of their troops, as where the peace plan and the other countries are saying, well, that's where negotiations then need to start. So it is a very complex issue in this of where this is actually going to go. But at the moment, they can throw out that they're ready for negotiations, but if that's not at that starting point where Ukraine's ready to start, they're not going to go there. As we do know, though, very in the beginning of the war, and this is well publicised by multiple big media outlets, that Ukraine was looking to negotiate right in the start, but then was, pushed in directions not to negotiate as well. The minister reminded that meetings had taken place between Russia and Ukrainian delegates in April of the previous year, so just after Feb, and accused Kyiv of aiming to extend the military conflict to wear down Russia. And he says, wear down. So we've spoken about this, that one of the big benefits of this war for the West, for America, is for a long time our largest adversary, or military adversary being Russia, is being worn down in a war of which we've pumped in some money, not that much money if you look at how expensive wars actually are, but not the West's soldiers either, just training and money in there to wear down Russia. Now, people say it's conspiracy proxy theory. Well, that's more if you're saying that is the only reason that we went into it, but it is definitely a benefit of what the West is getting out of this. And don't think the West is getting nothing back for supporting that. They get to wear down the largest adversary. Military-industrial complex is fucking loving it. All of this. Lavrov also accused the US and Western nations of prolonging war by refusing to consider any peace proposal that deviates from the official position of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky's position includes Russia's complete withdrawal from Ukrainian territory and the full restoration of Ukraine's sovereignty. And as we know, both countries are not happy with anything other than that. Now, according to Lavrov, the proposal is not viable. Do they want to negotiate to take place on the battlefield? Very well, then it will be on the battlefield. So saying the war will then continue, the negotiations will be of who actually then wins the war. We're going to look at some other quotes that have come out of this talking about the 10-point peace plan that Zelensky has put forward. He said it is completely not feasible. It is not possible to implement this. It's not realistic, and everybody understands this, but at the same time, they say this is the only basis for negotiations. Of course, developed by Zelensky. And what it really runs off, like we said, is that it's Ukraine's 1991 borders and the sovereignty of Ukraine, and of course, part of that is joining these other NATO, EU institutions, things like this. Now, this is the thing, is the peace plan that Russia just say this is just not there. So the problem is, in this, is the end of the day, the negotiation, it doesn't matter what plan you bring to the table. The negotiation at the end of the day is between Ukraine and Russia. Russia is on Ukraine's land. So at the end of the day, the negotiation has to actually be done with Russia. It doesn't matter if Zelensky takes the peace plan and Australia's Prime Minister and the American President and this and that says, yep, this is great, we love this plan. Well, the negotiation has to be done with Russia. And if Russia's not willing to negotiate with Ukraine, not willing to move back any troops to do that, and Ukraine's not willing if it's, complete sovereignty isn't there, well, the negotiations starting at that basis, if that's the basis of both countries want to start here and we're here, well, it's very difficult to have any diplomatic relation actually going forward from there. So these are not really going to start anywhere if neither country is willing to move an inch. Now, should Ukraine move an inch? No, I agree that they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, well, then they have to go militarily on the battlefield. Like Lavrov said, if they want it to take place on the battlefield, very well, it will be on then the battlefield. So we get that. Of course, we know in the UN too, they're trying to get some grain deal going further as well. Dark clouds over the grain deal. Russians also do not provide many positive signals on another significant issue the UN has attempted to mediate. Of course, the grain deal. This deal aims to facilitate the flow of Russian and Ukrainian grain and Russian fertilizers through a secure corridor in the Black Sea, which Moscow has not renewed. We saw the day before that happened, then strikes on the bridge, Kerch Bridge through Crimea as well. Lavrov referred to proposals by UN Security General Antonio Guterres to enable Russian financial transactions through a subsidiary of the Russian Agricultural Bank in Luxembourg to revive the agreement, and they stated that would not work. We do not reject them, Lavrov said. They are simply not realistic. The minister explained that Luxembourg branch, Guterres, is proposing still needs to receive a banking permit to operate. So what Russia's holding in his is they want more access to financial institutions that have been under sanctions to continue then the grain deal forward. And as well, with negotiation, there has to be some level of negotiation if you want to open. Why would Russia do this if they're not getting something back out of it? Now, should countries say, we don't want to negotiate with Russia? That's fair enough, but then that's not negotiating. That is holding a firm line. So Lavrov's appearance primarily focused on accusing Washington as NATO allies of seeking to maintain the status quo out of fear of the New World Order, with great involvement from countries in the Global South, a recurring message from the Russian delegation to the UN since the start of the invasion. And we have seen that, this referral to you guys trying to control the world and the New World Order from Lavrov speaking of that as well. Now let's see what the advisor, the head of President Zelensky's office, has said. Of course, Mikhailo Podolyak. We talk about him a fair bit on this channel. Ukraine definitely has no illusions about a war of attrition. Of course, we can hope for a white swan, but we base our calculations solely on sober assessments and worst-case scenarios. That is why we consistently explain to our partners the impossibility of any form of compromise with Russia, namely any peace with Putin. Without an unequivocal defeat of Russia and a fundamental change in the security architecture will only mean a break before the new round of war, which in this case will take place under worse conditions, and any compromise with the aggressor will have catastrophic consequences for international law. Now, but in this, if there's no compromise with Russia, then Ukraine have to win militarily on the front line and clear to their borders. I'm going to talk about in a sec why I just don't see this actually happening. But of course, the catastrophic consequence with international law, one of the big things is we shouldn't be able to let countries land grab. That if we show that Russia can come into its neighbor, grab a lot of land and move off, negotiate, sweet out of it, what is stopping other countries doing that in the future? What is stopping China with Taiwan, or stopping America with Mexico? Things like that, it needs to be, no, these are the borders. It doesn't move from there. So I get where he's getting at with both of these, but if there is no compromise, well, then you have to win militarily. Now, are the Ukrainian people happy about the prospect of a long war of attrition? Absolutely not. We are following this path only because there is no other way today. That is why our task is to hold out one day longer than the enemy. And we will do it because unlike Russia, we have no choice. See, in this as well, I actually believe we've sort of backed Russia into having no choice as well. That of course this is a war for survival of Ukraine, but I actually think too it's becoming a bit of a war of survival, at least for Putin. That if Putin does lose this war, does withdraw, well, where does that actually then hold the Russian Federation and especially Putin from there? Now, the UK deputy to the Prime Minister has said this in the UN as well.
Russia could end this war tomorrow. Putin could end this war tomorrow. That is what the world demands. But until that happens, the United Kingdom will stand alongside Ukraine, whatever it takes, for weeks, for months, if necessary, for years.
So, pledging the UK's support for, as he says, weeks, months, years. And it's going to be, well, at least another year, because it's not, the counteroffensive has only gone so far. We're going to go through the winter, and then we're going to have another counteroffensive next year. That is just, at this point, unless we see something major, that is just what is happening in this war. And in my opinion, neither Ukraine or Russia has shown that currently, in their current state of military power, like currently, I know that that can change, is able to militarily achieve their goals, at least without a huge shift somewhere in military power. And what I'm saying the achieved goals are is Ukraine's ultimate goal is to back to the 1991 borders. Russia's goal, to really capture Ukraine and hold Kyiv as well. I don't believe that either country currently has the power to do this militarily. So, as we see, Ukraine has advanced, some area in, 10 kilometers in the whole offensive, in months, in 100 and something days of the offensive. When you just look at this, let's just look down from Orikhiv, we're talking about 10 Ks there. Still a hell of a long way to go. And in Russia's war of 578 days, they've occupied about 20% of their wanted, seemingly wanted 100% of the country. This is what I'm getting at. I don't think either country currently possesses the power to actually achieve their end goal, at least militarily. Now, I know Ukraine's getting a lot of new weapons and the fighter jets, but I don't personally see the amount they're getting to really shift this static tide that's sitting there. It's in the tens of fighter jets, where Ukraine has said that they need well over 100. Same with the tanks, same with the missiles, everything like this. Now, Russia over winter will reinforce the defensive works and will remine areas. As we know, landmines were really Russia's biggest hindrance to the Ukrainian counteroffensive, as well as they'll mobilise and train new soldiers. And in the year of the fighting season, or next year when the fighting season starts, I think we'll see much of the same that we saw this year. Ukraine will get in new weapons, they'll mobilise new guys, they'll have volunteers train in the West, all this, as we saw this year coming forward. But it's going to be both countries just improving like this. And we have seen Ukraine adapt and learn to new systems, new tactics brilliantly over the last 18 months. But we have seen Russia also, maybe more slowly, but absolutely have done that. And if you want to see what it really is, you look at like the Ka-52, like Alligator helicopters, how many Russia lost in the beginning of the war to how many they lose now, that their tactics and how they're being used is changing there significantly. Now, so many people are convinced that winter will either benefit Ukraine or it benefits Russia. And personally, I don't think it's really obvious which way it goes. And personally, I sort of lean towards that actually helps Russia a little bit. I think there's this idea that all Russia needs to do, short term at least, is make it to winter, and then that will be a relief from the constant offensive operations from Ukraine, and we'll be able to rebuild defense, remobilize, go from there. That said, the poor weather may limit some air operations where Russia definitely has the advantage in the air, but it definitely won't end them completely. Now, whatever winter is really going to matter what's going to matter is the logistical supply and the rotation of soldiers, and who can do that more easily. And currently, I don't see that either side has a clear advantage to the other for this resupply and rotation. And this becomes especially if Ukraine can't cut off the south with an advancement to, say, somewhere like Tokmak. Now, there's been a lot less missile strikes from Russia over the past few months, and many have suggested that this could be that they are stockpiling for large bombardments as the weather cools off against the critical infrastructure like we saw last year. And Ukraine has shown great success with the Storm Shadow missiles and has been really announced, not really officially announced, but a lot of people are saying that they will then receive the Attacker missiles for the HIMARS system as well. So that longer range system will be able to strike deeper into occupied territory. But we know Russia will definitely restart their critical infrastructure campaign against the energy grid with missile strikes. Now, people do say that I have a bit of a doom outlook on this. And, well, I can't see any end in sight, and there's hundreds of thousands of young people fighting and dying on the front line. And I don't see either side that has the absolute advantage in it overall now. Like, if you said who's going to win this, Well, I don't even know what win this means. What does win this mean? To win this for Ukraine is to the 1991 border. To win this for Russia is all the way through to Lviv, up to bloody Poland, Romania's border. And I just don't see that any country currently has the power to be able to do that militarily. Diplomatically, maybe. There may be some deal done somewhere. But the grinding war of attritions, I don't think that either side has that advantage we're seeing at the moment to actually achieve that full goal. But everything can change very quickly. Now, we have seen over the last 48 hours multiple strikes against the Black Sea Fleet's headquarters, and the head of Ukrainian military intelligence, Kirilo Budanov, has told the Voice of America among the wounded is the commander of the group, Colonel General Romanchuk, and that he's in a very serious condition, and the Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Tuskov, is unconscious. So Russia saying that no one was killed there. Ukraine saying there are high-ranking officers there, probably somewhere in the middle, same as everything. Now, we're going to have a look over the maps and see what is changing. So, of course, we've got Ukraine, the centre, the capital of Kyiv, red areas occupied since 22, and the purple since 14. Where we're going to come is down into the south of Orikhiv, on the Orikhiv front, Robotyne front in here. This grinding war where Ukraine is having the most success and really pushing very, very hard in this. So we do have some geolocated footage that I want to show you as well. So let's look between yesterday and today. We see this push on the left of Verbove, and that is going to come more into importance as we go. But let's come down in here into Novopoprivka, where we do see that there has been a southerly push from Ukraine, that they are making ground from Robotyne into here. But remember that the green means offensive more than 2 weeks old, and let's see here, so over the 2 weeks have really advanced about 1.5 kilometers in here. Well, so we think. There was some video come out as well. The video can be found on my Telegram if you'd like to watch it here, of this is a Russian soldier, these are 2 Ukrainians here, and does ambush and both the soldiers here from the video. But this is then geolocated to then this area from the footage. So the soldiers are here and the Russian is on this corner here. And then that is geolocated. If we have a look at where this then lines up, is right on these 2 buildings here. Now, this isn't the greatest map ever because it's pretty blurry, but let's go into this. So these 2 buildings, and about halfway they see those 2 walls. So just about here. So this does then prove that Ukraine have pushed soldiers further onto the outskirts of Novopoprivka here as well. So the advancement is somewhere more in here, that there's a lot of grey zone, no man's land in here somewhere. So the advancement over the 2 weeks has been more like 2.6 kilometres, although we do know this area is very, very fluid. That said, with footage like this just shows, and there's so much of this, and the reason I've used this one is it's relevant for where we're talking about today, but this does show the importance of reconnaissance, drones working in conjunction with soldiers on the ground, and we're just going to see more and more and more of this. This bloke can't see over this wall, but from looking at the footage, it's pretty rough footage. He absolutely knows exactly where these guys are, and of course, reconnaissance drones on the front, unbelievably important in that real-time stuff that we're seeing just like that. We're going to see more of it. So what we're going to talk about now is, of course, on this offensive into Verbove, where we did see that Ukraine had then this advancement. So UK General Alexander Tanevsky has said on the left flank, so the left flank here, if you're facing into Verbove, we have a breakthrough and we continue to advance further. Not as fast as it was expected, not like in the movies about the Second World War, but it was important not to lose this initiative. So as Ukraine had the initiative and on that real push through there, to continue that initiative and continue pushing through, and this left flank where they've made ground there. Now we're going to have a look over, as we do all the other maps as well. So let's have a look at Robotyne over yesterday. I actually think I've named this one wrong. I actually think it was maybe 2 days ago. We have this. We see this is for Verbove, of course, and it's not for Perivka. So that advancement here. But then let's have a look over this then today. So it does confirm this advancement here as well. And I should have this one, another one. So this is today's map. Of course, this one was confirmed, Novoperivka. And we do see that this was yesterday's or 2 days ago then on the left, and this blue area in here has been confirmed as now under Ukrainian control. So they have taken a big chunk in here down through coming up onto these defensive lines through Pruvka here as well. But it is moving slow there. And that's just, it's not propaganda, it's just fucking true. It's moving very slow for how far this really has to come. But in the last couple of days, we have seen some larger chunks then gained. So let's have a look then at then this map, of course, the daily Ukraine map update, come into this area, and this lines exactly up with then what the ISW is showing. So this is the same chunk we're talking about, and for today, bang, same chunk in there, and a movement on the right of Lvov in here, so which was actually seen on the previous map. Let's look at yesterday's. So this is the chunk we're talking about that got taken today, and see this push here. This is, look here, that is that push. So the maps are lining up. Sadly, I don't have like a Rybar Russian sources map here for this area. So we do know a lot is happening there, and there's a hell of a lot of fight. Just because the front line's not moving doesn't mean that it's not a fluid area of grey zone and that there's not a hell of a lot of fighting going on. Now, that is Klishkivka. We will talk a little bit more about that. As we know from this area up around Bakhmut in here, there has been VDV troops moved around. Now, this is the only other change we see exclusively on the Deep State and Syriac. The other maps don't have an update for this area. So we just see this small push there. And, of course, this is the train line. So Russia was defending heavily this train line, but Ukraine has managed to push in areas, grey zone, over the train line in Klishkivka to Andrivka as well. We do know this area here may have also been taken from some other maps taken back by Ukraine. We do see that push up to then the train line. Let's look at what Syriac then has to say. Situation south of Bakhmut. Ukrainian army advanced southeast of Klishkivka and took control over a section of the railway between this town and the village of Andrivka. So, as you can see, lines up right up just north of Andrivka has moved up there, which is exactly the same area we are talking about, but does show a larger advancement from Syriac map there as well. Now, what am I talking about with the VDV soldiers? We do know that VDV was working with Wagner Group for a long time in Bakhmut, and that we have got a lot of information that they have then moved down into the south to try and stop where Ukraine is having then this breakthrough in here. So let's look at then what the UK MOD says about this. Since February 22, 3 successive commanders of Russia's most prestigious airborne regiments have either resigned or been killed. The 247th Guards Air Assault Landing Regiment commander, Colonel Vasily Popov, was likely killed in the heavily contested Orikhiv sector in early September 23. Only weeks before, in August 23, his predecessor, Colonel Pyotr Popov, likely resigned his command. Now, I wonder if these guys are, I don't know, related or something? I don't know. Independent Russian media sources claim he acted in protest over the military's failure to recover the bodies of Russian casualties. In the earlier weeks of the invasion, the 247th Commander, Colonel Konstantin Zizevsky, that'll do, was killed near Mykolaiv. The experience of the 247th highlights the extreme attrition and high turnover in Russia's deployed military, even amongst relatively senior ranks. We do know that Russia has lost a lot of senior members of their military, as well as a lot. The VDV took on a lot of casualties very early in the war, but this does then have further evidence that the VDV are down in that Orikhiv sector, that Robotyne sector, where we are speaking about. But Legends, again, a day where very, very little has really happened. I've looked through everything and it's just little news, which I don't think plays in the favour of Ukraine, who's on the counter offensive and needs really to show, I believe, to politicians, people, support around the world, that they actually can win back this territory, other than this territory here and some of the territory up in here to clear all of this. Legends, I hope you are having a fantastic Sunday, a fantastic weekend, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.